You're watching the World Cup right now, or you're about to, and you think you know how it works. You don't, not really. Most people watch the games, cheer for their team, and assume the whole thing runs like any other sports tournament. A bracket, some games, a winner. Simple. But the World Cup is one of the most bizarre, politically charged, financially insane machines in the history of human civilization. And almost nobody talks about the parts that actually matter. This video is going to change how you watch every single match from this point forward. Here's what most people believe. FIFA picks a host country, the best teams show up, the best team wins. Clean, logical, sporting. But that version of events leaves out the corruption, the mathematical chaos, the ghost nations, and the fact that a single referee's decision in 1986 literally reshaped geopolitics. We're going to pull back the curtain on all of it. I've spent weeks going deep on this. The rule books, the history, the financial documents, the scandals, and what I found genuinely shocked me. So let's get into it. Here's the roadmap. First, we're going to talk about how teams actually qualify and why the system is way more unfair than you've been told. Then we're going to get into what FIFA actually is, because it is not what you think. And finally, we're going to talk about the thing nobody wants to say out loud. The World Cup is not decided purely on the pitch, and I can prove it. Let's start with qualification, because this is where the first big lie lives. Most fans think the World Cup is a merit-based competition. The best 32 teams, or 48, starting in 2026, earn their spots by being the best. But here's the truth. Where you were born determines your chances more than how good you are. The world is divided into 6 continental confederations. UEFA for Europe, CONMEBOL for South America, CAF for Africa, AFC for Asia, CONCACAF for North and Central America and the Caribbean, and OFC for Oceania. Each confederation gets a certain number of automatic spots in the tournament, and those allocations are not based on football quality. They're based on politics and population. Europe gets 13 spots for 55 member nations. South America gets 4.5 spots for 10 nations. Africa gets 5 spots for 54 nations. Think about that for a second. Africa has 54 countries competing for 5 places. Europe has 55 countries competing for 13. That means a European team is statistically more than 5 times more likely to qualify than an African team, even if the African team is objectively better. Senegal beat France in 2002. Ghana eliminated the United States in 2010. Cameroon beat Brazil in 1994. These are not weak football nations, but they fight over scraps while European mid-table teams waltz in. And the cruelest part? Those allocation numbers have barely shifted in decades, even as African football has grown dramatically in quality. The continent that produces some of the most gifted individual players on the planet, players who go on to win the Champions League, the Ballon d'Or, league titles across Europe, still gets the same relative pittance of World Cup spots it received when the tournament had fewer teams total. The math simply hasn't kept up with the football. But here's where it gets even stranger. There are teams in the World Cup qualifying that most football fans have never heard of. Countries so small, so remote, that their entire national football program operates on a budget smaller than a mid-level YouTube channel. The Faroe Islands, San Marino, Liechtenstein. These are real, legitimate FIFA members. They play qualifying. They have rankings. San Marino has a FIFA World Ranking. They've been ranked as low as 210th in the world. They've scored 22 competitive goals in their entire history. But they show up, they play, and technically, they have the same shot at glory as Brazil. Well, technically. And here's a detail about San Marino that almost nobody mentions. The entire country has a population of around 34,000 people. That's smaller than many mid-sized towns. Their national stadium holds 6,664 spectators, and it's rarely full. Their players are part-time. They have day jobs. Accountants, teachers, shop workers. They train in the evenings and on weekends, then fly out to face nations of tens of millions. They have lost matches by scorelines like 13-0, and yet FIFA counts them, ranks them, and sends them a development grant every year. Because in FIFA's world, every flag gets a vote, and every vote has a price. That's important, but if you think the qualification system is wild, wait until you hear what FIFA actually is. Because this is where things get genuinely surreal. FIFA, the Fédération Internationale de Football Association, is technically a non-profit organization, based in Zurich, Switzerland, tax-exempt, registered as an association under Swiss law. Let that sink in. The organization that controls the most watched sporting event on Earth generates over $7 billion per World Cup cycle and has more member nations than the United Nations, is a non-profit. They have 211 member associations. The United Nations has 193 member states. FIFA has more countries than the actual world has countries. This is because FIFA recognizes some territories as separate football nations that aren't recognized as independent states politically. England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland all compete separately. They are 4 different football nations inside one political nation. Kosovo joined FIFA in 2016, before most countries recognized it as an independent state. Palestine has been a FIFA member since 1998. Football diplomacy is real, and FIFA uses it. There's another layer here that almost never gets discussed. FIFA's Swiss registration isn't just a logistical convenience, it's a legal shield. Swiss association law offers extraordinary protections to organizations like FIFA. Swiss courts have historically been reluctant to interfere in the internal governance of sports bodies registered under this framework. It's why FIFA has been able to operate for decades with minimal external accountability. The Swiss legal structure essentially lets a multi-billion-dollar global enterprise behave like a private members club. You can be expelled, you can be sanctioned, but the rules are FIFA's rules, interpreted by FIFA's people, enforced by FIFA's committees. It's a system designed to be self-contained, and that design was never accidental. But here's the thing about that non-profit status. In 2015, the United States Department of Justice indicted 14 FIFA officials on charges of racketeering, wire fraud, and money laundering. Swiss authorities raided the FIFA headquarters the same morning. The total amount of bribes allegedly paid out? Over $150 million. Executives were arrested at a luxury hotel in Zurich at 6 in the morning. The FBI had been building this case for years, and the World Cup kept going. The sponsors stayed, the broadcast deals held, because the World Cup is simply too big to fail. The 2022 Qatar World Cup cost an estimated $220 billion to host. That's not a typo, $220 billion. The next most expensive World Cup, Russia 2018, cost about $14 billion. Qatar spent 15 times more. They built 7 new stadiums from scratch, in a country with no football culture, in temperatures that forced FIFA to move the tournament to November and December for the first time in history, breaking a 92-year tradition, because it was literally too hot to play in summer. And those stadiums, some of them are already being dismantled. One stadium, Stadium 974, was designed to be completely temporary, built from 974 shipping containers, named after the country's international dialing code, taken apart after the tournament ended. A $400 million stadium, gone. What's less discussed is what happened to the workers who built these stadiums. Qatar relied heavily on a migrant labor system called kafala, which tied workers' legal status directly to their employers. Workers from Nepal, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and the Philippines arrived to build the infrastructure. Many had paid recruitment fees back home. sometimes equivalent to a year's salary, just to get the job. The Guardian newspaper estimated that over 6,500 migrant workers died in Qatar in the decade leading up to the tournament, though the exact number attributable directly to World Cup construction remains disputed. Qatar and FIFA both push back on the framing, but the conditions, the heat, the debt bondage, the legal vulnerability of workers who couldn't leave without their employer's permission were documented extensively by human rights organizations. The football went on. The opening ceremony was spectacular, and the workers who made it physically possible were largely invisible. But Qatar wasn't just buying a tournament. They were buying something far more valuable: legitimacy, visibility, a seat at the table of global soft power. And the World Cup is the most efficient vehicle for that purchase in human history. Now, if you're enjoying this and your brain is starting to melt a little, that's the right reaction. Drop a comment below with the most surprising thing you've learned so far. I read every single one. And if you want more videos that pull apart how the world actually works behind the scenes, hit subscribe.